But first tonight, we are only 78 short days away from Election Day, and frankly, the stakes could not be any higher. Now, the Democratic Party has now been taken over by, well, complete lunatics. Just take a look at this shocking CBS poll that was released yesterday. According to this survey, 58% of Democrats have a positive view of socialism. Only 18% have a negative view. Capitalism, on the other hand, only viewed positively by 32% of Democrats. 50% have a negative view. But what is even scarier, the Democrats have never been this nuts. But what's scary, when Democrats have a college degree or higher, when they're asked the question, 71% had a positive view of socialism. Just 16% viewed that negatively. Now, obviously, they've been indoctrinated out of any common sense that God gave them. And also, finally, tonight, the pressure is mounting on establishment Democrats. Either get on board or get out of the way, because one thing is clear, moderates are no longer welcome. Just look at the Kentucky governor, wannabe president Andy Beshear, who's now talking out of both sides of his mouth, at first calling socialism a failed experiment. Take a look.
58% of Democrats have a positive view of socialism, and just 32% have a positive view of capitalism. What do you make of that?
What I make of it is that people are struggling. Now, I believe socialism is a failed experiment, but I do believe that we need to get results for the American people.
Okay, rationalize it away. But in the very same interview, he called for abolishing the Electoral College. Oh, so he is giving into the DSA crazies. Take a look.
Fix the darn government constitutional amendment. It is time. It should outlaw partisan redistricting and enshrine part of the Voting Rights Act right there in the Constitution. It should create term limits for Congress and the Supreme Court. No more gaming those appointments. It should also overturn Citizens United, and I think call for direct elections of the president and the vice president. That could actually make things work. A big idea that would, yes, change government, but in a way enshrined in the Constitution where people would know it's going to get better.
I didn't realize you support abolishing the Electoral College, if you're saying direct election of the president and vice president.
Yeah, I've said it a number of times.
Supporting the DSA in many ways. Clearly, that guy wants to be president. But it's not just the so-called moderates afraid of the new radical left. That's a real phenomenon. Democratic leader in name only, Hakeem Jeffries, is also feeling the pressure. Said yesterday he does not support the DSA agenda. Listen, but think but.
Do you think, though, that there is room in the Democratic Party under the tent of the Democratic Party for Democratic Socialists? Is it big enough?
Well, listen, I don't support the DSA agenda as has been articulated by the DSA itself. Now, you're going to have individual members who have been elected in Democratic primaries, and if they are elected in the general in November, will be part of the House Democratic Caucus. It's going to be a broad caucus.
Notice he's trying to thread that needle. When pressed on whether Democratic Socialists belong in the Democratic Party, he refused to answer. Take a look.
Do Democratic Socialists belong in the Democratic Party, Leader Jeffries?
Well, what I can say is that I do not support defunding the police. I do not support open borders. I do not support abolishing the Senate.
Now, Jeffries refused to answer because he knows the socialists have seized control, and he likely knows, too, it's only a matter of time before they will replace him. His days and Chuck Schumer's days are numbered. His comments during the same interview on Medicare for all, that's not going to appease them. Take a listen.
Just to be very clear, though, as a Democratic leader in the House, would you vote for or against Medicare for all?
I think, as you've indicated in your question to me, it's not legislation that I currently am co-sponsoring or that I support.
Not currently co-sponsoring. Okay, well, that answer will not sit well with the radical left. If it was up to them, private insurance plans would not exist at all. Listen to their new rising star, Michigan Senate nominee, Abdul El-Sayed. Take a listen.
What Medicare for All does is it does away with the private insurance market, right? It now has one single payer. That's why we call it single payer, right? One insurance, and that is the government of the United States. It now can negotiate on your behalf, negotiating for everyone. And because it's the government, it covers everyone.
Now, their answer to everything is, of course, let the government take control. This makeover of the Democratic Party, it should alarm every single American. This socialist, communist movement doesn't just seek to reform our country, our institutions. They would like to tear them down and rebuild them, and they're even putting it in writing. The country would be unrecognizable if you, as an American voter, if you don't take this seriously in 78 days, the America that you grew up in, it will cease to exist. Telling you, most important midterm in your life, everything's on the line. If the socialists get their way, they will eliminate the Senate, no longer allow you to choose the president. They will pack the courts, abolish ICE, abolish borders and deportation, defund the Department of War. Genius. Eliminate cash bail, abolish the police and prisons, institute a wealth tax and a cradle-to-grave, womb-to-tomb, even government-guaranteed healthy food. And on top of that, they'll take over every corporation. The DSA website even has a tribute up tonight celebrating Fidel Castro, the murderer, the thug, the dictator that brought nothing but misery and poverty to Cuba. They're celebrating his 100th birthday, in which they also denounce Marco Rubio is genocidal. But somehow it gets worse. Over the weekend, you have one New York State elected DSA official actually said it was fine for people to shoplift. We should make it legal. You can't make this one up. Take a look.
Most of what we saw were crimes of poverty. People who were stealing things like toothpaste. People who were stealing things like, soap. And that means if you're stealing those things, you need them. And we are choosing to protect billion-dollar companies like CVS and Walgreens over the people who are struggling to get by. So I would say that the true crime is that there is such incredible wealth disparity in this city that there are people who can be thrown in jail simply for having a biological need.
All right. By the way, we did invite her on, and we thought she'd come on Tuesday or Wednesday, but now she's unavailable. What about the companies this DSA member is advocating that people steal from? They will probably have to raise their prices or go out of business. Isn't it bad enough that in major cities pretty much everything is locked up already? You can't even get toothpaste in some places without, finding a worker that's able to unlock the shelf for you. But now we should just, let people steal, make that legal? Okay. Doesn't that mean also that people that don't steal, poor people, they will end up paying more in the end? All right, thanks for watching. Check out my new podcast, Hanging Out with me, Sean Hannity. The big interviews, the debates you won't get anywhere else. Like and subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday.